I'm going to be taking you through the major steps in setting up a folio based on the checklist that your teacher has provided you with, but also I'm going to encourage the most evaluation throughout your folio by doing both ongoing evaluation and then summative evaluation at the end. So I'm going to be constantly referring to evaluation because this is one part that we need to improve as a class. So as you can see, I've set up a scaffold for a folio. This is the way I've set it up, but you're welcome to set up any form of presentation that you like, whether it be an PowerPoint presentation or a video or a presentation, anything that suits you. I'm using a Word document and I'm basing it on the checklist as already discussed. And the checklist will be found on the Google website, or your teacher will give you a hard copy. And I'm going to be working through, like I did with the last video, and obviously starting with the title page. It doesn't need much more information. Hopefully you'll be able to use your common sense with the title page. The next part is the design brief, and I've actually used the information here to create the second page in my folio. If I scroll down, I've copied and pasted the design situation and the design brief, and then I've created my analysis, which is my criteria for success, which is the second part in your design process. And what I've done here is I've given you a list of things that I thought were important. Now in terms of evaluation, it's crucial that you evaluate the statement you're given as the design brief. And I've looked at the key words there, and a toy manufacturer has approached you, and this is a fictional statement, to design and develop new and exciting board games with a central focus as the electronic dice. So we give you fictional statements to have a guideline and hopefully to inspire you a little. But I've taken some of the words and put those into my criteria for success. My first one is to follow the teacher's instructions. So you can make them as basic as possible, or you can really focus it on the design brief. Design a fun, effective and creative board game. Now I've just changed the word slightly, but I've taken that from the brief. I've also added in there, have a dice that is a central focus. There it is right there, the central focus. And complete the dice and board game by the due date. So I've put all of that information in there for you. Now I'm down to my next part, which is a project management. The project management is the next part of your design project, and you need to record each day the progress of your project and keep a track of this in this table form. Now again, you don't have to do a table form. I have in my case, and I've put in there the date and what I did, what you did, and then I've got in here an evaluation and any follow-up. Now, a lot of students had trouble with this because I said, how do I evaluate that? So I've given you a list of questions to think about. How did you feel on that particular day you did it? Were you happy? Were you engaged by the process? Were you fearful that you're going to do something wrong? Did the teacher help you? Was there a change in plans or a variation to your project? Did something go wrong? Is there anything extra you need to do to finish this part of your project? So have a look at those and you list those down. And as I said, this needs to be done for each part. So if you haven't started that, then you need to catch up and think back. And it's a lot harder to think back than to do it as you go. The next part of your research, basing it on your checklist, is just here, which is the research. And it's to create a collage of all different board games. So I've got two board games there, one Monopoly and the other Snakes and Ladders. And you can see I've created a collage. I've only got two. You'd have a lot more than that. It needs to be only on one page. But then I've evaluated it. And I've written here a little evaluation. I have chosen a range of board games in my collage. The main reasons I have chosen them is because they use a dice, part of the design brief. And then what else? And you can think of some things. It might be because you like to play it yourself. The next part of your research, based on your checklist, is to research 20 household items that have electronic components present in the table. Now, most of you will find a picture of an electronic device, list it. For those who want to extend themselves, try and find out information about what components are in that household item. So for example, I've used a computer and I've listed one of the components as a resistor. Alright, so if you want to extend yourself, you can definitely add in that extra column. The next part of the research is to research electronic specific devices and the components. This is pretty straightforward. List the components down the side, find an image of them, and find out what they're used for. So a description, why are they used in a circuit. Now if you have any issues with that, you know we've got videos made by a couple of teachers at the college, and you can access those videos on YouTube, and we go through all of the components, so there's no excuse to know that information there. The next part is you need to find what a simple and a complex circuit is and explain what the circuit is and how it works. You'll be able to find this information again through the videos or via some resource like the internet. The next part is a questionnaire, and a questionnaire is a fantastic avenue for finding information and researching and investigating. And I've got here construct a 10-question questionnaire. Now, your questionnaire shouldn't include simple information like your age, and if that's appropriate to ask. If it is, you can record it. If it's not, you don't ask it. You could also list the gender, because that may help you in formulating some of the research and information from the survey. But I've listed some questions. What board games, which require a dice? Again, I'm going back to that brief. Do you like to play? What is your favourite game? How many players are needed in your favourite game? Do the board games you play require much concentration? Why or why not? Again, you can add and ask questions on your own. Don't copy mine. Come up with your own ones that are going to give you the information you need to complete this project. Moving back into the electronic dice, you notice there's not a lot of design putting into the dice, but there is into the board game. But we need to know that you know the content behind electronics as well. So we're asking you now to look at different tools, and the tool might be like a soldering iron, it might be like a wire snipper. You're going to find a picture and you're going to give a description of the use. Try and list as many tools as you've used. The next one is materials used in electronics, and if we go back to my checklist, you can see I'm down to number 8, materials. And some of the materials we've used a sponge to clean off the soldering iron, we've used solder, we've used a battery. Notice I've moved the battery from tools to materials because it's more it's material than actually a tool. My next part here is scrolling down, is the area which contains the concepts. And now remember, the concepts aren't, you're not drawing concepts of your electronic dice, you're drawing concepts of your board game. So based on the formulation that you've got from your survey, and also a board game that you want to make, and one that engages you and you have interest in, you're going to start sketching those. Those can be drawn by hand, or you can use some of the basic features on Word, such as the shapes in there, or images that you find on the internet, to create your own concepts. I'm pretty sure your teacher will cover that with you in class. Again, if you have to freehand draw it, that's fantastic. You're not going to get any lesser marks. If you freehand, we encourage freehand drawing. But the most important thing I want to concentrate on is the evaluation, because for some of you, in the last folio, there wasn't much evaluation done on each of your concepts, and this is really important. You need to list the features. Now, look, we call it a PMI, positive, minus, and interesting, and students get lost in that. So I've listed some questions here for you. Things like, the features I like and why. So what did you like about what you drew? The features I don't like and why. You might have put something, I really don't like that now, and why. The features I find interesting are. Now, these things might carry over to the next one. The features I'll keep as part of my final design are. So anything you're going to carry on into your next design or into your final design need to be listed. That might be the colour. It might be the features or the components you include in it. There might be, like if you're doing snakes and ladders, you might have the snake you've drawn as carried on. So they need to be carried forward. Then you do the same for concept 2, and then you do the same for concept 3. You need to make sure you evaluate each of those concepts. And I just noticed I haven't changed my concept over from 3 there. So make sure you evaluate, and again, don't just list them. Make sure you expand your answer by writing why. You can see I've moved into a lot more evaluation than what we did in our last folio. You'll then come up and choose your final design, which will be the features you've listed, should include all the features you've listed in each of your concepts. So make sure that, that it does, otherwise I'm going to say, well, you don't understand the process. And this final design, for my class, we're going to be drawing our final board game on an Adobe program, either Photoshop or Illustrator, okay? And I'd encourage you then to create it as a JPEG, and we'll import that as a picture into our folio. If you're not going to do that, it can be hand drawn. Again, we ask you to, and we encourage you to use the skills that you are best at, and if that's hand drawing, that's fine. But we're also asking you to list the colours you've used, if not colour it in, and that would be great. The materials that you're going to use, if it's going to be more than just a paper board game, and the measurements. Moving down to the next part, you need to write a one-paragraph justification. You need to tell us why this design was selected as your final solution. And again, this is coming from our checklist here, so up to the one-paragraph justification. So things like, really, if you're going back, it will be all of these things that you've listed here, the things you like. So you're just relisting those 2 things that you list in the concepts, but again, they'll be coming from the 3 concepts and hopefully developing as one final design. Next thing you need to do is create a list of rules for your board game, because no board game can be played without some rules. So you just list those down. It might be simple as, roll the dice, the person with the highest roll of the dice goes first. Then it might be roll the dice, and depending on what you roll, you take two moves forward. If you roll a 2, if you roll 3, as much detail as you need for someone who hasn't seen the game before to play. And then remember, you are creating your own game, so we need some instructions. The next part is production. We covered this in the last folio. You need to list the steps in which you made the product. We're talking about both the dice and the board game, and just list the steps. You can do that in a table form if that's the easiest. And the last part you need to go through is your final evaluation, and this is something I called, so I'll just go back to my checklist and just show you where we're at. So we've done production and we're up to the final evaluation. They're using a scaffold. I'm giving you a scaffold here through the video, and I've listed some questions there for you. Now, basically, I've gone through a list of questions there that are similar to the last ones. What problem I found people did was they listed the answer to the question but didn't evaluate their answer and didn't give reason. So for the first one, is my project aesthetically pleasing? Aesthetically pleasing means, does it look good, first of all? So if you say yes to that, you have to tell me why. It might be that both my dice looks good because all the components are soldered in neatly. I haven't used too much solder on the points. It might you might then say, and my board game also is well crafted. It's functional as a board game. It has it's coloured in, so it looks exciting. It engages the player. All those things, and you do that for each of the questions listed there, and they're all pretty straightforward. I think the hardest one is this one here. Does my project resolve the design brief? You need to go back to the design brief and check whether it actually answers it. All right. And if we go back to my design brief here, does it answer this question? Does it use the dice as central focus? Think about all those features. And once you've done that, you'll answer all the questions. But again, I encourage you, please keep telling yourself why. Why am I answering it this way, or why doesn't it meet these particular needs?